Hello. Okay, so I'm a tiny bit late today. I thought I'd sorted out some camera issues with my Facebook portal, but it turns out it works on a call, but not when I'm doing a Facebook Live. So I'm going to try using my phone today and see how that goes. Yeah, eventually I'm sure I'll get around this tech complication, but anyway, right, so I thought I would do a little bit of standing stuff today. So I'm going to be doing some calf stretching using a dome. Let me see if I can angle this a little bit differently. Right, okay, yeah, you can see my feet there. Hopefully you can hear me. So I have a dome here. I use these half domes for stretching my feet and calves on regularly. If you don't have one of them, you can use a block, a book, anything just to put under the front of your foot. It really doesn't matter. So I keep these things around my house. I've got several of them dotted all over the place, just so that I can do this on a regular basis. Yeah, I'm basically going to put the front of my foot over my item, whatever it is. You may not have a dome, it doesn't really matter. So I'm really draping the arch of my foot over it and then dropping my heel down to the ground. So I want to fully extend my knees, so my knees are nice and straight. And then where your other foot is, so if I've started on my right foot, where's your left foot? So if you step your left foot forwards a little bit, you're going to get more stretch. If if your calves are super tight and you prefer to keep your left foot back a little bit, you can do. You can stay here like this. I do some kind of calf stretching in pretty much all of my classes. I'm going to come to the other foot now. Fine, I'll show you from the front. So you want your feet parallel, your legs hip distance. You're going to step one foot over the dome. So I've switched to my left foot now. Drop the heel down to the ground and fully extend your knees, and decide where you're putting your right foot depending on how tight your calves are and what you're using to stretch your foot. Yeah, I stretch my calves in most of my classes, or I use the calf stretch regularly. I believe people should be stretching their calves several times a day, because our calf length is really important to walking, squatting. Your gait pattern will be affected. Your ability to walk well up and down hill will be affected if you don't have appropriate length in your calves. So if you don't have a dome, you can use a block, or even a cushion. If your calves are really tight, just grab something and place the front of your foot over it and fully straighten your knees. And also notice where your hips are. If your pelvis has gone forwards, then pull your hips back a little bit as you straighten your legs. And something else you can think about when you're stretching your calves is whether your ankles and knees rolled or dropped in. So can you see my ankles there, folks? Right, okay, so if my ankle joint is there, that is kind of in the middle, right? That's medially dropped, yeah? So if I turn my knees out, I externally rotate my knees, it pulls my ankle joint out. So I generally, in my classes, I get people to go through that process of turning your knees in and out, rotate them in and out, let your feet roll. So let your feet roll deliberately. And then keeping the ball of your foot drawn down to the ground, continue with that rotating of the knees, so that you can find a kind of middle ground where the center of your ankle is centered, as opposed to being dropped in. I mean, some of us do supinate the foot, so we kind of roll to the outside of the foot, which is not ideal either. You want to find a neutral position where your ankle joint is in the middle. So consider that when you're coming into any kind of calf stretch. Make sure that your feet are parallel, and your knees are a little bit turned out before you step your foot onto whatever item it is. And then have a little look down at what your feet are doing and gauge whether your foot is turned out. So if you turn your foot to parallel and then roll your knee out so that your ankle joint is centered, does that change the stretch sensation for you? Do you get a better stretch when you come into that. Something else that we want to be concentrating on a little bit, I'm trying this on all kinds of different devices, and it's not ideal on my phone because it's a teeny tiny screen. Yeah, but so something else, lateral hip strength. So if we are stuck inside for long periods of time, if we are, you know, even if you've got a garden, you know, if you're quite sedentary a lot of the time, and you know, we're not getting the miles in, or you're not able to get to the gym, obviously, as we, you know, might be accustomed to doing, then we want to be, you know, if you're spending a lot of time sitting, we want to be thinking about our lateral hip strength. So I'm going to show you an exercise called the pelvic list, which is designed to, again, encourage, strengthen the muscles that hold us up as we take a step. So when you move and when you take a step forwards, there's that moment when you're balancing on one leg where you want these muscles to be able to hold your whole body weight. So if you do have a block or a step of some kind, then you can sort of, you know, bring it in front of you. If you don't, doesn't matter, you can do this on the ground. But so my block is a little bit shorter than my foot, so you want to make sure that your heel is on the block. So prioritize where your heel is. And then I'm going to push that foot down so that this side elevates. I'm not pulling up, so I'm using my right leg here. I'm not pulling up with my left waist, I'm pushing down with my right hip. So I'm going to come down with control and then push all the way back up. If balance is not your friend and you are using a block, then you can keep your left toes in contact with the ground. You don't have to have your foot off the ground. That's the ideal, that's what we're working towards. But if you feel really wobbly, then keep your left toes in contact with the ground, or do this near something that you can hold on to. So several things, I'm going to switch feet and I'm going to turn to the side, but several things I'm thinking about when I'm doing a pelvic list are, so A, where is my centre of mass? So if your hips tend to drift forwards and the weight is over the front of your foot, pull it back a little bit. So you haven't got your weight in the back of your heel so that you feel like you're going to fall over, but sort of, you know, towards the front of your heel there. So it's the back of the midfoot. And also, what are your ribs doing? Slightly obsessed with ribs, but if your ribs tend to lift, then drop them down so you've got your rib cage stacked nicely over your pelvis as you come up and down like so. The pelvic list is a really valuable exercise that you can sort of do a few of here and there, dotted out throughout the day. So you're keeping your movement going. Rather than feeling like you have to put an hour aside to do a complete workout, I mean, that's great too, and a lot of people are really enjoying doing that, but if that's not your thing, or you're sort of beating yourself up because you don't do that, then I like to find strategies of little snippets of things that you can do a lot throughout the day, rather than feeling like you know, you have to do it all at once, because actually you're going to get more value from that anyway. So let's say you were doing this just on the ground. So I'm going to shift back to my right foot, I'm going to push my right hip down, and that's created height in my left hip, and you want to be able to clear the ground without effort. So you should have enough height in that other hip for your leg to clear the ground. So this, although I'm swinging my left leg, it's not my left leg that I'm working, I'm trying to keep everything else nice and stable, and actually what I'm doing is I'm working the lateral hip on that right side as I swing my leg. And, you know, my other arm is kind of going automatically, my arms are swinging automatically to counterbalance me. So I'm not having to think about that. The arm swing is just happening naturally because I'm swinging this leg. So if you're happy to stay balanced on this side, we're going to do a few little variations on the right leg. You can take a break if you need to. But, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to rotate all of my body over this standing leg. So I'm not leading with the foot. The leg's coming along for the ride, and I'm using my whole body weight to rotate over that standing hip. And then I'm going to, if I show you from the side, I'm going to come into a little hinge. So I'm going to let my bum shift back and straighten up. And again, it's not, I'm deliberately keeping the other leg completely relaxed because I'm trying to fatigue or work my right side at the moment. So I'm not particularly coming into any kind of yoga style balances. I'm using this as a functional movement because I'm trying to challenge my hip musculature in different positions that would naturally occur during movement, during natural movement. Okay, so again, take a little break if you need to. We're going to stay with the same leg, and now I'm going to sort of tip all of me to the side. So again, I'm not doing a leg kick with this leg. I'm deliberately moving all of me over and then back. And each of these movements, if you sort of think of your thigh bone sitting in the hip socket and the muscles are having to activate in different positions. Okay, so let's have a go on the other side. So I'm going to push my left foot down, my left hip down, and that's creating the height in my right side. And I'm swinging my right leg now, but it's more just to kind of, for you guys to check in. Do your arms naturally just start to swing in opposition to help balance you? I would hope so. That's your natural gait reflex kicking in. And B, do I have the height in the hip for my leg to naturally clear the ground without effort? So I'm not trying to pick the leg up, I'm just swinging it to check that I've got the height in that hip. And then, so what do we do next? We did the hinge, yeah? So I'm going to hinge with a nice straight back, no rounding in the lower back. Left leg stays straight. My right leg is just a dead weight right now. It's not doing anything. The work is in my left hip at the moment. So I'm hinging and straightening. Letting my bum shift back, keeping my spine nice and straight. Also, you can feel your foot making lots of little corrections into the ground to keep you balanced. Some people feel stuff like this a lot in the calf when you're doing single leg stuff, and it's because your foot is having to work and make lots of tiny little adjustments to straighten you up, to balance you. And then we did moving over to the side. So again, this leg is coming along with me right now, so I'm just kind of tipping over, maybe losing my balance a little bit. Okay, I have no idea how many we've done. I haven't been counting, but I'm going to stop now. So we're going to do a top of the foot stretch as well. So I'm going to take my right foot behind me. I've got these sort of squishy-ish mats underneath me. If you've got carpet or a rug underneath you, that helps to cushion it a little bit. You can put something underneath your foot to make it more tolerable. And you can choose how much weight you have on the top of your foot. So it might be that you have your foot quite close to you and you have less weight on it, so that you start to build up a tolerance. If you feel a bit crampy, then wriggle in and out of the stretch. If you can tolerate a little bit more weight, take that foot back, but notice whether your weight drifted forwards a bit. Pull your hips back so that you're really standing in your standing leg. So I'm stretching my right foot and I'm standing in my left leg. And a lot of people say they feel that their left hip is working, or their standing hip is working, which it is, because you're in a slightly unstable position. Okay, so we're going to switch sides. So I'm going to take my left foot back now. So you could keep it quite close, start to build up a tolerance. If it feels crampy, roll it in and out. If not, if you can handle it, take your foot further back, have a bit of padding underneath it. Some people feel super crampy in this position, or you start to get real pain or discomfort. If you have foot issues like bunions or neuromas, you might find this really uncomfortable, but it still has value to move your foot in this way. We tend to tighten in the feet quite a lot. If you've taken your foot back, notice whether your weight has drifted forwards. Pull your weight back into your standing heel. Okay, and let that go. Doesn't tell me on my phone how long I've been going for. That's annoying. Hi folks, it's nice to see people joining me. Right, okay, so I'm going to do a bit of kneeling stuff now. So I've talked about feet and hips. Hands are also super important, and I've been doing a little bit of hand mobilization in my other lives. So I'm going to focus on hands on the ground now. So there are some disadvantages to using my phone, but at least you can see my hands. So I'm going to splay my fingers out nice and wide. So I want you to see whether you can get your thumbs perpendicular to the other fingers. Notice what your arms are doing. I want you to deliberately rotate your arms in and out. So you're keeping them straight, but you're spiraling them so that your elbow pit, the inside of your elbow crease, is turning with you. And notice what direction it wants to be in. So if you prioritize your elbow, do you need to turn your fingers out a little bit? You can do, that's fine, because what your elbow is doing is affecting your shoulder. Okay, so as you splay your fingers nice and wide, can you spread the load across the whole of your hand? It might be that you need a little bit of something. If your wrists are really tight, you might need a little bit of support underneath your wrist in order to splay the fingers nice and wide. If you can get your hands down and your fingers splayed and your thumbs away from the other fingers whilst you've got your elbow crease facing forwards, see whether you can press the knuckle of that index finger, that first knuckle, down and lift the index finger away from the ground. So you're sort of pushing the first knuckle down. See whether you can make the index finger light, and it's just lifting a tiny bit away from the ground. So if you can do that, it kind of says that you have the range of motion to keep your shoulder in a good externally rotated position without, the cost of your hands curling away from the floor. So find what's accessible to you. Turn your fingers out a little bit if you need to. And then we're going to come into some rhomboid push-ups. Again, I did this on my first live. You can let your shoulders slide together and push them away again. So as you're doing this exercise, if you're really concentrating on what you're doing, it's going to get fatiguing quite quickly. So you want to make sure that your arms are straight, you've found what range is available to you, and you stick to that. So notice if your arms start to bend. We're not doing that with this exercise. Notice if your hands start to curl away from the ground. Try and keep that index finger pushed down. And keep your spine neutral. So notice that I'm not doing a cat-cow. You can do that as well. You can do that for a bit of a stretch, but there are a gazillion yoga classes on there that you can look at, so I'm not going to try and compete with that. I want you to keep your spine neutral for this exercise so that we can target the muscles that are helping to stabilize your shoulders and your thoracic spine. Okay. Let me see. I have no idea what time it is. All right, folks, I'm sure I've been nattering on at you for long enough now. So, as always, if you have any questions, let me know. If there is anything in particular that you want me to cover, also feel free to let me know. And otherwise, yeah, it's Easter weekend, isn't it? All the days are blending into one for me, but I'll be back. I'll come back on Monday. I'll come back on Monday and carry on with the live. So I'll do the little short lives Monday to Friday. All right, folks, lots of love going your way. Have a good weekend. Enjoy the sunshine, and I shall see you all soon.